Hey crazy fam, every day people dream to move to Los Angeles, California. I spent all of high school with the mindset that I was moving to California no matter what. But the reality is many people move away and for good reason. So in this video, I'm gonna go over my top 5 reasons to not move to LA, and some of them are not typically what you would hear. So stay tuned for that. But if you can't tell from my other videos like my vlogs, I actually love living in California and I'm planning on not moving for a really long time. So feel free to hit that subscribe button down below, and I am actually going to do a video next Sunday on the top 5 reasons why you should move to LA and maybe why you should never leave. Now before I get too sappy thinking about the reasons why you should move here, let's move into the first reason why you should not, and that's because it's actually a very sprawling city. You're not going to get your typical city feeling where everything is close and walkable, but here everything is pretty spread out, and it may not seem so by how many miles away it is apart, but things aren't close together like they would be in, say, Boston or New York. Those are usually the cities I think of because I've personally visited them myself plenty of times, and I know that so many of the things are so close together. But when you want to do things on a regular basis, like grocery shopping, go clothing shopping, go out and have fun, you can't always get that in all the same areas. You might get it to a degree, but for the most part, you're kind of going to have to go a little bit further out than you would, per se, being in another city. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is if you're looking for that typical city environment that you probably think of, you're not going to get that in LA. You'll probably be a tiny bit disappointed, because I know I kind of was, because I lived in downtown LA before I lived on the west side by the ocean, and I noticed that when I was in downtown LA, it wasn't a downtown like I expected, because I was used to visiting, you know, like Times Square and having like so much crazy things all so close together, and the downtown I was like, oh, there's a few restaurants, kind of a few stores, and even then you kind of had to walk far for each store, and that is not what I expected when I thought of a city. So it's like you see these tall buildings, you see some short buildings, and you just really don't have as much of that retail space that you'd expect. It is getting a little bit bigger. There is starting to get more stuff. So downtown is definitely up and coming. There's more things that are being introduced to it, but in general, it's not what you're gonna think of when you think of a typical city. So like I said, I lived in downtown LA and I've lived on the west side, which is where I live now. But depending on where you are, you kind of give up being able to walk to certain things. Like in downtown, I walk to restaurants and some retail stores, and then being on the west side up by the ocean, I can walk to the ocean and restaurants, but I can't really walk to stores. It's because, again, it's not like New York City where you can walk to so many things or take a quick subway ride, because you're really not going to have the subway system you're going to have in other cities. It really doesn't go to that many places, and the bus takes forever, and both can be super confusing at times. But if you live in certain areas, it can be useful. Like if you live in downtown LA, it'll take you to Hollywood or Santa Monica. But if you're not right on the line where the subways are, it really doesn't work that well. For most people, it's not a good option because it's just starting to expand. So you end up hopping in the car to get to places to be more convenient. But one of the most known things about California and Los Angeles specifically is how insane the traffic is. Literally insane. So yeah, you hop in the car to try to save time, but sometimes it takes just as long. You might save a few minutes here and there, and so you spend forever in the car, bumper to bumper traffic, and then wherever you get to, you end up having to pay outrageous prices on parking. I don't even want to get into how much it costs. Some places will charge per 15 minutes that you stay there. And then if you choose not to pay that, you'll end up paying an insane ticket, because they do ticket so many cars so often. And sometimes the signs are confusing, like you can park here on this day or that day between these hours and these hours. So sometimes you even think you can park there and you can't actually park there. You will once in a while be in certain areas that are more residential where you have free parking. But for the most part, for the main areas you're going to go to on a more regular basis, you're going to have to pay for parking. You kind of have to live here to really understand what we mean by how bad the traffic is. We don't talk about things by how many miles away it is. You can't be like, oh, it's only a few miles, because depending on what time you're leaving and where you're going and coming from, that few miles can take forever. Let's say you went to spend the day in Santa Monica on the beach and you make your way home to downtown LA at night. It can take you an hour to 2 hours just to get home, when if there was no traffic, it would only be a 30-minute drive. That kind of gives you a range where it can be double, triple what it would be without traffic, just because of the time of day and which way you're going. Let me stop talking about the traffic and the cost of parking, because I could literally go on forever. So let's move on to number 2. You think this would be one of my top 5 reasons to move to LA, but it's actually one of my top 5 reasons not to, because in a lot of cases the weather's not going to be what you expect it to be. When I lived in downtown LA, I thought it was going to rain every morning for a month straight until someone finally told me about June gloom. To get this term actually right for you, I am going to have to read off my paper, so ignore me looking down, but I will put it on the screen. It's a California term for a weather pattern that results in cloudy, overcast skies with cool temperatures during late spring and early summer. AKA, it's cloudy, and if you lived in Connecticut like I grew up, it was going to rain all day if the skies looked like that. But here it ended up being like sunny and warm later in the day, so you'd be wearing a coat in the morning, freezing because it's cloudy and not warm, and then the daytime, around lunch, you'll be warm as heck and taking off your jacket. And that was such a confusing thing to me for the longest time, because I'm like, where the heck is the rain? But it wasn't the case. It's just June gloom. It's just a cloudy time during that time of the year. And when you think of California, don't imagine you think of cloudy, gross looking skies. You probably think of sunshine, which you do get later in the day, so I don't take for granted how nice the weather can be. It's just that great weather is actually mostly for the tourists, because just like living anywhere, you get used to the weather. So here people are still hoping for summer and warm days, because we are freezing when it's like 60 degrees out, 50 degrees out. And when I grew up, if it was 50 degrees out, that was t-shirt weather when that started happening again. But here I'm wearing a jacket when I go outside sometimes, and I'm like, yes, it's gonna get above 70, finally above 70. So you should not move to LA if you expect it to be vacation weather all the time, because the reality is it's not. And so let's move on to the third reason not to move to LA, and that is actually how dirty it is. Everywhere from Hollywood to downtown LA to Venice are known to the locals as great areas that are also covered in dirt, garbage, and even homeless people. It's not great living in an area with lots of people living on the streets, from tents sprawled everywhere to garbage to feces and even harassment and screaming from the mentally ill homeless. But the saddest part is constantly seeing people that need help and knowing there's not much you can actually do. Because a lot of people can barely afford to live in LA as it is, and having to see someone in an even worse situation and knowing they can't really do much is really hard to live with on a daily basis. And on more of a superficial level, it does really suck to live in such a beautiful city and pay so much to live in such a beautiful city and have it be covered in garbage and be so dirty. Which brings me to the fourth reason not to move to LA, and that relates to everything else, and that is the cost of living here. Investopedia actually marked us as one of the top 10 most expensive cities in all of the US to live in, and that is one of the biggest reasons why you shouldn't move here, because you won't get the life you exactly expect if you can't afford to live that life. Yes, we have such amazing things around us, but we are also insanely expensive, so you won't be able to afford to do a lot of things you'll actually want to do. You'll obviously need a place to stay, and an average apartment in Los Angeles costs $2,620 a month. And that's an average apartment. So that doesn't mean you're gonna get all the amenities, you're gonna get all these great things that you want out of your place. A lot of times it'll be tiny. It might not even have a kitchen depending on what price range you're in. Yes, you will find stuff below that price range, but most likely you're gonna have to split it with roommates. You're gonna have shared common spaces, crammed bathrooms, not enough fridge space. You might not have amenities. It might be a really old building. So if you're okay with giving up certain things, obviously you'll be able to find a place for cheaper. And there's this idea that you're only supposed to spend 30% of your income on housing. So if your apartment costs $2,620 a month, then you're gonna have to make $8,733.33 a month, which is over $100,000 a year. And if you're young and just moving to LA, you're most likely not making over 100 grand a year. And so you're not gonna be able to afford the average apartment here. And you're gonna give up something or many things just to afford to live here. And that doesn't even count your necessities like food, water, power, heat. Yes, I count Wi-Fi as a necessity for most of us. So that doesn't even include that cost, nor does that include the cost of going out and doing fun things like getting drinks or something, which at most bars is gonna run you $10 or more a drink. So you have to think about that when you're thinking about another area, which would cost a heck of a lot just for a single drink. And here it's gonna cost you a heck of a lot more. Though I do know the minimum wage here is way higher than it is in other states. Actually, I will look it up for you right now and see what it is as of now. California minimum wage. wage. Okay, so California minimum wage is $12 an hour, but I'm pretty sure Los Angeles is higher, so let me check. So Los Angeles minimum wage is $14.25 an hour. So yeah, that is a lot higher than, let's say, Virginia. My parents live in Virginia right now. I didn't grow up there, but they live there now. Let's see what the minimum wage is. Virginia's minimum wage is $7.25, and here it's $14.25. So that is a huge difference, but to get just my part of the apartment with roommates in a really old building is more than my mom spends on his mortgage for a 3-bedroom house with its own like rec area upstairs in the attic. It has a huge yard, many acres. It has a little shed, a workshop area, all these things that would not even come close to my place. And the mortgage is less than what I pay to split an apartment with people. So that's something to keep in mind is, yeah, the minimum wage is higher, but it doesn't make up for how much higher the cost of living is here. And with the costs of living so high here, you're really not going to be able to afford a certain lifestyle. And that kind of brings me into my last point, and that is how living here is not like you see on TV or in the movies. And that's true for really any area, no matter what. It's not going to be what you see on TV because that's a false reality. But a lot of the things you see are actually real. You can go to those fancy restaurants, that hotel, that amazing apartment, that amazing house, this, that. It is all possible, but for the most part, you're not going to make enough money to do what you see on TV. So you kind of have to live with the reality that California is not going to be that way for you. And even then, even if you could afford to do all those things, you are still going to have to live life. Depending on what career you choose, you're still going to end up having all these adulting things, from working to laundry to cooking. And if you make enough money to pay someone to do it for you, then you still have to, arrange to pay someone to do it and figure out these other things and work to be able to pay for those luxuries. So it's not going to be, laying on the beach every day and going shopping and living in these great houses and doing all these crazy events and all this fun stuff. It can be a lot of fun, but it's not going to be that 24/7. It's about making the most of the area that you live in. You can do that in your city. You don't have to move to LA to do that, because here you're going to have to figure it out just as much as you're going to have to figure it out somewhere else. I know that does not go over all the reasons why you shouldn't move to LA, and you probably have your own opinions on it, but those are my top 5 reasons. And again, I am going to be doing a video next Sunday going over the reasons why I do love LA and why you should move here. So stay tuned for that, and I really appreciate you watching the whole entire video. And since you made it this far along, you might as well hit the subscribe and like button down below, and I will see you next time for another video. Hey, no, no, no.